Okay, okay, okay. So uh, I'm jogging around. Oh, hey, anyway, let's wind down the music, shall I? I hope you enjoyed that preview of my guest. Let's take down the music. Here we go. There you are. It's fine. And I hope you're all hearing us well this fine sunny morning here in London town. Okay. This is brilliant. This is actually brilliant. I'm feeling good. In fact, I'm feeling. This is the Motivator Show. This is where we translate our words into action and where success is ours for the taking. I hope you believe that because that is fact. And today, propaganda we're all exposed to continuously. Don't you worry. I have the right esteemed elder to put us right. Be assured of this. Let me just put up my captions. Let's get this up right. There you go. So last week, let me deal with last week. Last week, we experienced some kickback. Yeah, it was a kickback. Yeah. The heirs of slavery. Yeah. They're going to speak to us and they will speak to us. So, in preparation for that show to come, resilience is being built into our system. So, what happened last week will not happen again. They will keep trying, don't you worry, because the truth shall set us free. Be assured, the truth shall set us free. Oh, yeah. So let me go straight into this show because today's show is going to be fantastic. But let's begin with the lifestyle messages, all important lifestyle messages. And why they're so important? Because they speak to the very soul, to the physical condition, the mental condition of our peoples. But it's within our power, it's within our gift, it's within our will to do better now for our children's and our children's children. So these lifestyle messages are for you to consider. Very simple changes to your lifestyle can and will make a difference. I'm going to say it again because I want it to sink in because I've had some really interesting responses to previous messages. Simple changes to your lifestyle can make a significant, real world difference to you, your family, and your wider networks. Be assured. Very simple changes, and I would applaud you to do so. In the stats about the physical condition of our communities, the mental condition of our communities, indeed, the spiritual conditions of our communities. Nature, taken to share facts with you. I don't mind being challenged on the facts, but I must share facts with you. So I begin by asking you to consider the amount of sugar and salt that you ingest every day. Sugar is one of those ingredients we add to our foods for so-called flavoring purposes. Yeah? That's what we do. And we are, as children, given sugar in the form of sweets, yeah? Hardened sugar. So we become addictive. We like it. Yep. And sugar, of course, It's very similar to many of the chemicals in our brains. And so for many of us, we develop a sugar addiction. Mhm. A sugar addiction. And I'm a victim, as it were, of that sugar addiction. But I've countered it. So I ask you to consider the amount of sugar that you ingest in the form of cakes or hidden in those foods, particularly those processed foods. Excessive consumption, I'm told I should mention this time, of those fruit juices. Believe it or not, when you buy that litre full of fruit juice, it is full, jam-packed, full of sugar. You should only take a, maybe a quarter of a cup full. Yeah, it is sugar rich, or fructose as they call it. Do you need to add sugar to your teas and coffees? Consider the sugar or sucrose quantities in those tins of drinks. And consider the sugar quantum in the cakes and those other flavory things you like to eat. And consider the long-term impact it has on your life, our lives, because we are a community. One of the biggest public health conditions in our community is, of course, diabetes, a truly avoidable condition. Type 1, of course, is genetic, but type 2 is directly related to our lifestyle. I urge you to consider reducing significantly your sugar consumption on a daily basis. And obviously, what often happens very often with some people, okay, is that they don't fully realize the long-term implications of consuming sugar each day. But in our community, we've got twice the national average of diabetes amongst our community members. Yeah? So I urge you to consider the amount of sugar that you are consuming. It may be nice, but most things in excess can and will be harmful. So I just simply ask you to consider. Equally, I ask you to consider the amount of salt that you consume. Salt is one of those pernicious ingredients we add again for flavor enhancement to our foods. Okay? Just like sugar, regular consumption in excess of our daily requirements can and will prove harmful for too many members of our community. Its principal condition is, of course, high blood pressure or hypertension. I ask you, please, to consider the amount of salt that you are consuming each day. Do you need to add salt to your food? I know you're going to say yes, but honestly, gradual reduction. You can actually taste the food, not the salt. Honestly, it is true. It has worked for me. I no longer purchase sugar, indeed sugar and salt from the grocery store. No longer need to do so. Yeah. But I admit it took time. In my case, 5 to 10 years of gradual reduction. It is to that extent I was addicted to sugar and salt. And I know there are hundreds of thousands, millions of members of my community are in exactly the same position. So I urge you, please, to consider reducing the amount of sugar and salt that you consume each day. Equally, I ask you to consider reducing, if not excluding where possible, the amount of additional fat and carbohydrates that you consume. Okay. But take the fat first of all, typically derived from meat-based products. Okay. When you grill the meat, you see all this clear liquid coming out. Yes, a fair proportion of it is water, but an even larger quantity is actually fat. What happens in our bodies? We store the fat. What does it do to our body? It clogs up our arteries. Yeah. What is the long-term impact with our bloated shoulders, our bloated abdomens, our bloated buttocks? Yeah. What's the long-term implication? You're carrying excess weight. What's the consequences of carrying excess weight? Well, we all know. Reduce immunoresponses, so you're vulnerable to a whole range of diseases. And of course, you're actually shortening your lives. When was the last time you saw someone who's 80 years old and is overweight? When was the last time you saw someone in that position? So I urge you, please, to consider the amount of fat, but carbohydrates is another one. Carbohydrate is primarily, in our case, derived from wheat-based products, wheat-based foods, okay? So the breads, lots of breads, yeah? Lots of these floury stuff, yeah? We don't need it. Honestly, in the quantum we consume, we do not need it. Our bodies assume that we are fattening ourselves for an emergency. An emergency here in the 21st century that doesn't come. Because we've got access to calories in excess. We have access to calories in excess. So the consequence is that we store the excess fat and carbohydrates. I ask you to consider the implications for your long-term health. If you want to take care of yourselves, you will reduce the quantums of each of those ingredients I've mentioned. And the last one I should mention is, of course, starch. Starch derived primarily from the rice-based products or some root vegetables, but primarily, in our case, rice. Far too many members of our community consume rice every day. And yes, I know those from the Caribbean, I know, I hear the rice and peas. I hear you. I hear Jamaicans shouting, oh, no. Oh, and I hear the West Africans, the Nigerians, the Ghanaians. Yeah, I hear you all now when I refer to the jollof rice. I hear you. Consumption of jollof rice, the consumption of rice and peas every day, common sense tells you, please, is not an healthy action. We store the starch in our bodies in the form of sugar, another form of sugar. Consider the long-term implications. It is your choice. I'm not giving you instructions, but if in doubt, please consult your doctor. Ask your doctor. If you're dissatisfied with the response from your doctor, ask for a second opinion. Go to another doctor. Go to a nutritionist. Yeah? Go to your pharmacist. These people are best placed to give you the professional advice. Mine is but guidance. But that's guidance found in good evidence, both in official reports and, of course, empirical or obvious evidence around us. Far too many members of our communities are overweight, particularly our women. I've seen a stat that more than 75% of Black women here in Britain are overweight. Every turn you look, you see far too many young, this is what's so devastating, young, overweight women in the prime of their lives. Yep, when they can give birth, they should be giving birth to healthy babies, but they're overweight. It is within our power to change this circumstance. So I simply ask you to consider reducing the amount of starch that you consume, the amount of fat that you consume, the amount of carbohydrate that you consume, yeah, the amount of sugar that you consume, the amount of salt that you consume. Just those ingredients alone would make a profound difference to your health outcomes. But what will give all of this real substance? That's if, of course, you increase the amount of, say again, fruits and vegetables that you consume. Let's be clear about the fruits and vegetables. Vegetables, particularly those green vegetables, particularly the green vegetables, with a broad range of vegetables. I'm also told fruit in the right quantum every day is a healthy part of our diet. Fruits and vegetables, particularly green vegetables. I'm told we should be consuming no more than a fistful of food per sitting, if you like. Can you imagine? A fistful, consider how much you consume each time you sit down to eat. Yeah? How many fistfuls are you consuming each day? In other words, excess quantities of calories. Excess calories is one of our biggest considerations. Huh? I've seen it. Don't you worry. I've seen far too many men and women consuming excessive amount of calories, far more than a fistful. What is, of course, most critical, in addition to eating a good balance of fruits and vegetables, yeah, consume the right amount of water is absolutely critical. You hear me? I drink between 2 to 3 liters of water per day. It does vary, but it might be different for you depending upon your height and your mass. Okay? Seek professional advice. Mine is but guidance. Seek professional advice. Take control of your health. Take control of your health. Do you hear it? Oh, yeah. Let me just drink some whilst I'm here. Most critical, not only should you have a balanced diet, more fruits and vegetables, right amount of water, it's critical, mission critical, that you exercise. Exercise, and I don't mean work. Some of you saying, oh, why? I walk a lot during my work. That is not exercise. You're simply walking. Yeah? Okay. Exercise is more than simply walking. It's the flexing of all your muscles, the using of all your muscles at different times. Yeah. I went out and I did my exercise this morning. Yeah. I've got a local public park, which I do 3 or 4 circles of it. Yeah. It takes me to around just over 4 miles or so. Yeah. Most mornings I do this. Or I'm using my weights. I've got my own exercise routine here at home. Okay. In addition, I use my weights. I know you haven't seen these weights for a few weeks. I know. There you are. I use my weights. Yeah, and my weights are fantastic. Oh my gosh. Oh, honestly, if you don't have them, get them. Yeah, and what you're doing is flexing those muscles, racing your heart. Yeah, your heart wants to be raced. Yeah, it wants to feel the exercise. It's pure muscle. Your heart wants to be exercised. But if you haven't done it for a while, gradually do this. If you can afford to go to a gym, go to a gym. If you can afford it, organize for a private trainer. He or she will be trained to support you. Okay? It is so important that these messages continue to resonate with you. And I'm heartened by the hundreds of messages of support for this health section, or should I say, lifestyle section of the show. It is mission critical. Mission critical. Together, we've got to raise the general health of our community together. But we have to work together. Help those who are experiencing difficulties in changing their habit. help them. Okay, help them. Don't let them fall by the wayside. They are our family members. We've got to help them. It is mission critical, okay, for the general health of the community. I'm going to say it again, for the general health of our community. It is absolutely true. And we can reduce the levels of diabetes and hypertensions. We can reduce the levels of heart conditions that pervade our communities. We can reduce the levels of cancers in our communities through managing and considering our lifestyles. Okay? So you build up that resilience against all the maladies that pervade the background environment. I urge you to do so. I urge you to do so. But those of you who have made the change, at some point I'm going to get at some of you here on the studio and give testimony. Give testimony of the changes and the impact it's had on yourself, your family, your loved ones, and those friends networks around you. Give testimony. Because I know some people still doubt. Yet, far too many of those who are doubting possess conditions which are clearly avoidable. But I'll say much more on this. I'll just say in conclusion on this particular part of the show, I will continue to provide the lifestyle messages as the first part of each show, because clearly it has had an impact. Without any shadow of a doubt, it has saved lives. And without any shadow of a doubt, that these messages, whilst they are primarily aimed at an adult audience, I get that, it's critical that we teach our children these habits so they can take these good habits into their adulthoods. That's the long-term thinking here. Teach your children. Teach those for whom you have guardianship. Teach them to live a healthier lifestyle. Please, for us all, teach them. I say both the mothers and the fathers, yeah? The grandmothers and the grandfathers, yeah? Yeah? The uncles and the aunties, you all have a role to play to ensure that our community is a healthier one going forward. All right, I'll pause there now, and I hope those messages find you well. And I want to positively welcome you to the show. This is the Motivator Show. This is where we translate our words into action, and where success is ours for the taking. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Now, I want to give recognition to some past contributors before I go to the main theme of today's show. So the first part of this, what I would tackle, and it's an interesting one, but I had a discussion of this with some women in the community. And it's an interesting one. Some of you will recall in January, I did a show with my co-presenter, Empress Abner, and it was entitled The African or Black Nuclear Family Matters. Now, if I may say so, it seems like it's a pretty obvious statement, isn't it? Isn't it? It was curious. It was a show that, whilst the message was clearly positive and clearly in tune with our current state of affairs, it was interesting, the muted response I received to that show. Interesting. The show is on the YouTube platform under The Motivator Show. Okay? DE space Motivator Show. Yeah? The Motivator Show. Okay? You can find us on YouTube. In fact, if you are listening to us via a purely audio channels, you can see and hear my persona. on YouTube, also on Facebook as well, again under the Motivator Show. See us live in the flesh, as it were. But returning to the African Black nuclear family matters, I was struck by the muted response. Okay? Back in January, 21st of January, and I addressed the issue from the point of view that articles on class, income, and mobility and poverty in a recent series of articles I had encountered highlighted a number of key features that question why the nuclear family, where you have the father of the child actively involved in that child's life, and the mother of that child actively involved in that child's life, and they've entered matrimony. They're married. So the reason cited in the articles is as follows. Entrenched multi-generational poverty is largely a Black phenomenon, and it's intricately intertwined with the collapse of the nuclear family, particularly in the inner cities. And by now, these facts shouldn't be hard to grasp because it's self-evident. Almost 70 or more percent of Black children are born to single mothers, which is indeed, in my mind, a misnomer because, gosh, children can only be born to mothers because women are, that they have a womb so they can bear children. But anyway, never mind. It is interesting. As the welfare reforms came into force here, both in Britain and in the US, okay, which supposedly should herald the decline of child poverty, okay, it would appear that marriage in our community declined. I am specifically referring to marriage between a man and a woman, particularly where they have children together. The consequence, of course, is poverty. Our children, far too many children, are living in poverty. Yeah? And that poverty undermines both the economic and social standing and their psychological robustness, resilience. We could do better. That's what that particular show focused on. But I notice it received a relatively mute response. So I am going to do it again. It's of strategic importance to our community that we discuss this matter in detail, yeah? Lay all the facts on the table. So I will do this show again. It's of paramount importance to the future viability of our community, both in Britain, Africa, the Caribbean, and of course, United States of America and beyond. It's of critical importance that we discuss this matter. So I will do it again. But I also, in closing, and just to spend a few more minutes, want to refer to another show I did more recently on the 6th of May. This show was focused on listen to the professor, Professor Frank in this instance. Remember to take care of your prostate, men. Okay? A show specifically aimed at men. In fact, for reasons I cannot explain, the very first health show was to specifically address male health, men's health. I'm not sure why. I've conducted numerous health shows, but they've always been aimed at women. I suppose, we want to make sure our women are healthy. I know. But it's important for us men to look and consider our health. One of, if not the biggest killers amongst men, particularly Black men, is prostate cancer. It's principally a killer because, and I'm guilty of it, we do not visit doctors regularly. And I say with no pride whatsoever, I went for more than 27 years without visiting a doctor. I say with no pride whatsoever, until I had to go because something happened and I needed to go and see a doctor. Yeah, there you are. I say it with no pride, but I promised the doctor I visit at least once a year. So I do that once a year. Yeah, I'm relatively healthy type, that's true. But an annual visit is critical. And as part of that visit, you should expect that your doctor would want to check your prostate, particularly if you're over 40 years old, particularly for black men, particularly if you're over 40 years old, okay? The swelling of your prostate is a natural phenomenon of aging, okay? But prostate cancer can be detected early enough if you go for those regular screening at your, okay? The doctor would, of course, check your body, yeah, and might take blood, what they call a PSA test, okay? And that's to check for the prostate-specific antigens in the blood, okay? This is just the way it is. It is so critical. I would urge you to ask your doctor to take the test. If you're over 40 and you're a member of my community or of African heritage, or indeed your Asian heritage, okay, particularly from southern, from the Indian subcontinent, Pakistani or Bangladeshi or indeed Indian, you also should ensure you men must, just like us Africans, must ensure you take those regular tests. Okay, it is mission critical. It's for all of our health, not just your health, because our ill health affects others in our families and our wider community. So I want to thank that professor, and I will next time I mention him, I will put his contact details on the screen, and I apologize, I can't get it up for some reason right now, but I'll mention his name next week. So be ready with your pens and paper, or if you're viewing us on YouTube or Facebook, you'll have Professor Frank's details for you to make contact with his practice. He's an eminent scholar in the field. So please, trust the professor. Listen to the professor. His advice is sound advice, and it's in your or our best interest. Okay. So what I want to do now, I want to move on to begin the intro to our show. So I believe my co-presenter's joined. So let me get our co-presenter. I want to talk to her about her son and examinations. Let's get her back on the screen. Is she there? Let's get her up on my screen.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Empress Abner. How are you? Huh?
I'm really good today. I'm going to a hair show today. So this is the first Black Muslim hair show in London.
Whoa.
So I'm attending that today at 11 o'clock. So.
Oh, but we men can't go, I assume, because we can't see your hair. Huh?
Yeah, you can't go. But when you get married to us, you can see our hair. The curly cotton wool hair, you get to see that later.
You mean I could get married to you?
No, not you. Not you. I'm just saying any man. I'm just saying any man.
Oh, I should get that. What's his name? What's his name?
Akbar.
Oh, no, never mind. I won't say that. Anyway, I won't go there on that. Okay. So what's happened to you these past few weeks or so?
My son's been having exams for his new secondary school.
I wish him well.
He's getting to know other students. So we find out his results on the 15th. He's got an induction day on the 21st of June. The day he goes to his induction day at school, I'm going to the Houses of Parliament, which I'm so nervous about. To talk about all the work I've been doing with services in the community and talk about my company. No, I'm nervous as hell. I said to them, why would you take the crazy practitioner, the outspoken practitioner? So I'm looking to, my son, he's just been getting settled into secondary school, finding his voice and, getting ready to be a preteen, which he's already started. But so that's why Saturdays have been very busy for me, because I've had him on the weekend, but I don't normally have him. But yeah, I've been doing lots of work in the community. We had an Eid event, coming up. We've got an Afro Latino event coming up. So loads have been going on. Yes, I've been a busy lady. Yeah.
Well, again, I would reiterate, extend our encouragement to your son.
Yeah, I think we should have some young children on here talking about transition to secondary schools, the worries about secondary schools. Be a good show to have.
I think it will be. I completely agree. Well, I'm going to put that one in your very capable hands.
I don't know who I'm going to get. I don't know who I could get. But yeah.
And just tell us, when you go to Parliament, again, just tell us why you're going to Parliament.
So basically, I work for a company called School Home Support, and we work with schools to help children boost up their attendance, because sometimes it can be as low as 50%, 40%. So we're trying to support the families, support the children, have better experiences in school, and bring obviously increase the attendance. It could be money issues, it could be traveling to school, it could be peer relationships. So we work on that with parents and their families, and it could be financial reasons. So we support with that. And especially currently right now, the biggest issue is housing. And as we know, a lot of schools in Southwark are closing down, not just in Southwark, in East London, West London, North London, and schools are merging. So yeah, so that's what we're doing now.
I hear you. Well done. I applaud your work. Yeah?
Do you? I don't know.
Well, you see, what you exemplify is that empathy for others. I know you've sacrificed a lot for others, That's why you're here. You're my kind of person,
Am I?
No, without a shadow of a doubt.
I would say I'm Marmite. As I've always said, I'm a bit like Marmite. You either love me or you hate me. So,
I can assure you, there are hundreds of people that have benefited from your compassion. And if more of us as Africans showed compassion for other members of our community, let's alone other people outside the community, our community would be truly transformed.
Yeah,
I would applaud your work. Enough respect to you.
Yeah. And you know what's so funny? The secondary school my son's going to, I know about 5 people that live in the area. So I said to him, if you misbehave, I will know what you're doing on the streets. So when I used to go out on the streets and my mum used to know what I was doing, I would definitely know what you're doing.
Oh, there's a threat. I hear you. Oh, my gosh. You're not my mum now, are you? Oh. Okay. Thank you, Mum. And thank you, Empress Abner, for all the work that you are doing now and you will do into the future. I seriously say that to you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So if I may, I want to now move to the theme of today's show. It's a particularly poignant show because the guest today, who I will henceforth refer to as our esteemed elder. Okay? Esteemed elder, and I'll give you his name in a few moments.
Kwaku.
Oh, please don't say it. Oh,
sorry. He's got the same name as my cousin. I couldn't help it. When I saw it, I thought, oh, it could be my cousin, but it's not. So,
okay. Thank you, Empress. Anyway, the importance of this show is that the narrative we start off the show, of course, is that the motivator show. This is where we translate words into action and where success is ours for the taking. But in order to achieve success, you've got to create your own narrative, a narrative that is meaningful and significant to you. Okay. But we live in a society, in a world, which is full of propaganda. Okay. And often it's full of Afrophobic propaganda. Okay. It is necessary for us to counter that propaganda because far too members of our community absorb that propaganda as if it's our propaganda. Someone else's truth becomes our truth. So I'm going to bring into the studio our esteemed elder Kwaku.
Kwaku.
Oh, you're going to correct me again. Oh, you're off again. Oh, right. Let me do this now, please. Let's bring in the.
I wonder if you can guess what day he's born on.
I'm going to ask you for that question too. Oh, there you are. Got you. My esteemed elder Kwaku. Kwaku.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you feeling this morning, my esteemed elder?
I'm blessed. And each day that we wake up, we must realize that it is a blessing. So I am blessed.
Good, good. What I've got to do is just put you in the right position on my screen. There you are. You're center stage. You're now center stage. My co-presenter, Empress Abner, has already questioned me on air of the pronunciation of your name, my esteemed elder. Uh, Empress, you wish to speak to him? Go ahead.
How are you, Kwaku?
I'm blessed, as I said. And how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. You know what? You actually look like my cousin.
Okay. Can I just make a point about the name?
Yes.
Often people hear Kwaku when they say Kwaku. The point being that I think the Kwaku pronunciation is more prevalent. So people won't say, look, I know some Ghanaian or African names. So they default to Kwaku, but mine is Kwaku and it's spelled with an A. The other is spelled with an E. Same name. I always compare it to Smith and Schmidt. Same name, but different pronunciations. Yeah.
Okay, so I got it wrong. I got it wrong this time.
Oh, I didn't even hear you say Kwaku. I thought you said Kwaku.
No.
Oh, okay.
This is okay. This is good. We're learning from each other. Empathy has started. Yeah? Action has started. And that's the purpose of these shows. It's informative. If I may, my esteemed, I'm going to refer to you as my esteemed elder. So, and I give you that because I've learned so much from you. And that's the purpose of elders in our community. These are individuals who have lived a full life, okay, and have been able to bring the entirety of their lifetime experience, both academic, empirical, practical experience, and their love for their families, okay, to bear on all issues that impact ourselves today. Okay. So, my esteemed elder, first of all, welcome for the second.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. And I note that you have not slowed down since I last met you.
And I was supposed to, particularly from last year, and definitely this year. And it's crazy. It's crazy.
I found that to be the case. I attempted to slow down my presence here on the show, and that didn't work out either. So I'm not. We should not fight it. Okay. Whilst there's a demand, we should satisfy the demand from our people. Okay, because it must be for good reason. It must be for good reason. And I know there's a proverb I should be quoting at this moment, but I won't quote it just now. Let me ask you my first question, if I may. Why do you do what you do? You've got many hats. Why do this at all? Is it simply a business or is it a vocation?
Right. I decided that I'm going to have a conversation with you and I'm going to be a bit disruptive from in the beginning.
Go ahead.
So you have asked the question, but I want to do a couple of things and ask you a couple of questions, and then I will respond to your first question.
Of course.
First of all, I'm rocking a T-shirt and it says "Proud to be African."
Love it.
And I had this T-shirt 13 years ago. Early on, you mentioned you did a program about Black African. I'm not quite sure, but you mentioned, can you just reiterate what you're saying about, and you didn't have a good take-up, I think you said. What was that program called?
The Black or African Nuclear Family.
Okay, I'll stop you there. In that title, you said the Black or African. And if you remember, and I keep telling you this because it's important that you realize your role in that narrative. In 2011, the UN declared 2011 the year for people of African descent.
Yes.
I would say African heritage.
Yes.
Because the whole world, the whole humanity is of African descent. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
The whole humanity is of African origin, but not everybody is of African heritage. Anyway, so I did a video at the tail end of that year and asked people two questions. Are you African or Black? Then the second question was, have you heard of the UN's initiative called the year, what was it? International Day. Oh, Kwaku, let me relax. The International Year for People of African Descent.
Yes.
and most of the people hadn't heard of it. And this was a program I was doing towards the third quarter of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Subsequent to that, I think probably around January 2012,
That's right.
I convened a meeting at Westminster City Hall.
Yes.
You were there. So we're looking at so in the end, I created a project called the oh my great Kwaku, the African or Black question.
Yes.
And let me tell you your role in that. In those deliberations, I asked, probably I said people should put up their hands, those who describe themselves as African or those who describe themselves as Black. Remember, I done a video called the African or Black question. So I played that before. And most people, maybe because of the forum, identified as African. But you did something important. You said, look, why are we wasting time with this? And you put forward a motion that going forward, we just simply call ourselves African.
This is true.
And that was overwhelmingly passed.
Yes.
And that has been the bedrock of my identity advocacy. Subsequent to that, in 2012, I used to do the African history programs in Harrow. We decided that going forward, we're not going to call it Black History Month anymore, but African History Month. At that meeting at the Westminster City Hall, I wore this T-shirt and I was trying to promote it. This was done by a Nigerian African brother, or British Nigerian brother. And he had some that could be like, I'm proud to be Caribbean, I'm proud to be Nigerian, or whatever. And I wanted to promote it. The point is that I'm putting this out on your channel because he seems to have disappeared. He was doing a lot of positive things in terms of the imagery and also circulating information about what's happening in the African community, and it's disappeared. So I thought I will share that. Secondly, I'm controlling your show for the beginning.
Right away.
On your chat, you've got someone called Herman Irish. And if he doesn't mind, can he put in the chat whether he's a Herman Irish of the UN Fellows, the UN IDPAD, International Decade for People of African Descent. The African experts, the UN African experts came to UK, I think around October last year, and I met a guy called Herman, who's half Irish and half African, and I suspect it's him. So if it's him, Herman Irish, just confirm that it's you, but it could be someone else. So that, and then my question that I wanted to ask before we move forward was that I'm glad that you invited me on the show, and I appreciate it. And I give thanks. But we never discussed the topic, and then so I want to ask, why did you particularly choose the topic for today to be the to talk about the, disrupting Windrush? Because I do so many things. So why did you choose that particular one?
So there you are. The esteemed elder has spoken. You understand why I say the esteemed elder. Okay. First of all, I was being provocative in noting the show African or Black Nuclear Family Matters. I knew he would respond to that. I knew you would respond. But clearly, we are African, but in no doubt. But I'm also mindful that there are many of our people on a transition, on a journey.
Yeah.
So I need to help them along that journey. As we go along that journey, we inform each other, share knowledge with each other, which is why, my esteemed elder, you're here. Yeah.
Okay. I'll say. Sorry. Have I interrupted you? If not, I'll shut up. Because have you finished?
It is fine.
Yeah. Okay. Then, in response to what you said, I think a couple of days ago, I did a program for 25th May, marking African Liberation Day and also the 3rd anniversary of the death of, and I always preface the death. I say the Afrophobic murder. By the way, we use the I, so it's always Afri as opposed to Afro. The Afrophobic murder of George Floyd. Yeah. And one of the comments, and I don't read the comments when I'm doing events, so this is something I'm reflecting on after the event had finished. The word that came to mind was we have to be humble, because someone was saying, why are we doing this? There was someone that came all the way from Kenya to talk about what the history of African Liberation Day. And this person said, oh, but we know it. Why are we wasting time? We know this. And what the word that came to mind is that we have to be humble to realize that we are all on different levels. So the fact that you know does not mean that the next person knows it. So what you say in that journey, we cannot be fascist. I believe strongly in being African, pro-African, but I'm not anti-other. I'm very pro-African, but I'm not anti-other. So if someone is not comfortable calling themselves African, fine. They're on a journey. They may have an epiphany at some time. So, but I did ask a question that you haven't answered. I said, in terms of this particular program, why did you decide, out of the myriad of things I do, for you to pick up the Windrush as the topic you wanted to discuss? Because I've got something to come after you've answered that.
Thank you. All of our shows need to be topical and relevant with the times. Okay, the topic of Windrush is a national disgrace. Okay, and it's one that is being battled by members of those from particularly West Africa and the Caribbean, who came to Britain up until 1972, but arrived here as British, but their nationality was taken away from them by the 1972 Immigration Act. It is critical, therefore, that the community are aware both of that as a fact, particularly those who are children of those who came to Britain during that period, okay, as I am myself, okay, understand their rights, but ignore the negative propaganda that has pervaded the politics and the national discourse around this subject. Okay? And I say deliberately because far too many members of our community read the right-wing press and will gain the impression that we are asking for something for nothing. Okay? As the prelude to this show, and those of you who are able to see the prelude on Facebook and YouTube, I ran a few clips. And if I may, my esteemed Ilva, let me run those clips right now, if you don't mind. Okay, if I can set this up, hopefully it will work without any problem. Here we go. I'm just going to bring this up, put it center stage. So there you are. The 1948 Nationality Act imbued that every person under the Act or the citizens of the United Kingdom, the colonies, or under the enactment of the time of being in force in any country mentioned therein, means that you are by birth a British citizen. Of course, I mentioned you, and I say to people, a wise man. Well, in fact, let me bring it up again. I want to bring it up again. I want to put it on the screen because I want people to, and I'll try to pause it at this point. First of all, fact checking the Windrush narrative, and here is the part where I focus on the British Nationality Act of 1948, and I'm going to pause it here. I think can I pause it here? Let's see if I can pause it. Let's see, would it pause? Would it pause? It's not going to pause. Okay. Okay. Never mind. I'll capture it in a moment. But as regards to yourself, a wise man fills his brain before emptying his mouth. And you exemplify that classic African proverb. Therefore, if you provide the facts to many of our people who are still hiding from the authorities, who are entitled to British citizenship, if you say it, you have the weight, the gravitas, if I may, to enable those people to rise above the parapet and take what is rightfully theirs. That's why I want to focus only initially, on that particular subject. But I'm very conscious in your case that you do much more. And what I will show you, what I will go to in a moment, is this. I will go to this. This is you. And I will ask you about each of your current themes, your courses that you have for the rest of this year. But let me stop that for the moment. I hope that responds fully to your questions.
That it does, but then in response to your answer, whatever your answer was going to be, the next step for me was to put a disclaimer.
Okay.
The disclaimer being that I'm happy to talk about the Windrush and sort of debunk some of the myths, but I've got a book coming, so there's a limit to how much I'm going to talk about.
Okay.
So in fact, I've got a Windrush event at Lambeth Town Hall June 16th, so you'll be able to get some more there. But and I've also written an article, which for some reason, until I see it in print, I'm not quite sure, because it's about 10 myths about Windrush, and I'm not quite sure if the publishers, because obviously they're celebrating Windrush. And I'm putting the facts about Windrush in terms of some of the misinformation, the myths, and blah, blah, blah. So I think they might find it challenging. So until I see in print in June, I don't know if it's going to come out. Anyway, so there'll be a limit to how much I'm going to say, but I can start with the first thing that you put up.
Thank you.
The 1948 Nationality Act.
Yes.
So let me just say a few things, and then you can come back to me.
Thank you.
But the first thing that any listener on here should take from it is that it has no bearing on the Windrush narrative. It's been a conflation. It has no bearing on, because the Nationality Act was not about immigration. It was about citizenship.
Correct.
It was about Britain saying, oh, Australia, you want to have your own separate citizenship. Canada, you want to have your own citizenship. Oh, we've just made India and Pakistan independent. We have to make sure all these guys are within our universe.
Oh, God, yes. Yeah.
So it decided to create a universal citizenship. So it did not matter where you were, whether you're born in Britain or you're born in the colonies or the dominions, you could have a common citizenship, which was British. So the idea of always linking the Nationality Act to the Windrush story is bogus.
Okay.
Secondly, it came into effect, it was first enacted after the Windrush, and it came into effect after the Windrush. So people did not board the Windrush from the Caribbean. By the way, the Windrush did not come from Jamaica. It came from the Caribbean. It started its journey in Trinidad, not Jamaica. And often they say the ship that came from Jamaica. Technically, if you want to say where it came from Bermuda, because that was the last port of call before it got to Tilbury. So this is my brother.
Mm-hmm.
It's important that people talk about the Nationality Act, but not in the context of immigration and not in the context of. So then let me tell you something. So what you said is absolutely right. That is what's in the act. Then you mentioned the 1971 immigration. Now this is an immigration act. But can I tell you that the seeds of the problem were formed 10 years ago, 10 years prior. So in fact, you don't have to look at the 1971 Act. Each country that became independent of Britain had an Independence Act enacted. So let's talk about Jamaica. What year did Jamaica become independent? So-called. And when I say independence, when I write it, I put in quotes, because what does it really mean?
So-called, yes, so-called.
Right. But so anyways, since we're going to use the common parlance, do you remember what year Jamaica became independent?
So-called in August 62.
Great. So in 1962, there was a law enacted called the Jamaican Independence Act. Sadly, people can talk about the Nationality Act and they can talk about the Immigration Act, but this has gone under the radar, so they don't realize the implications. So my brother, the motivator, you're about education. So let me just spin the key points of this act. And so you have similar things like the Trinidadian Independence Act. So it's about, in fact, there was the Gold Coast Independence Act. So each of the colonies would have one of those, but we're sticking to Jamaica. And the tenants are pretty much the same standard. All they do is that they change the name of the country. That's all they do. Right. It says that, yes. Oh, before I do that, let me just rewind. The British Nationality Act, the reason why it's immature is that anybody before 48 in the colony could have come, and they had a right to come, and they had a right to stay.
Correct.
That is what I'm saying. It's irrelevant talking about the 1948 nationality as if it gave us some new powers. It didn't. You could come. If it wasn't so, right, the people that used to stow away, once they served their jail time, they were free to be in England. They were not deported. They were only deported if they could not prove their citizenship. If you say you're Jamaican, you couldn't prove you're Jamaican, then you have a problem. But as long as the immigration, not the immigration, the equivalent of the Home Office, the immigration officer was convinced that you're British, because you came from a British colony, you serve your term and you stay free. So you see why the National Act is of no use in terms of that part of the narrative in terms of immigration, because it did not give the same new rights. You could come, you could settle.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So now I'm going to go to the Jamaican Independence Act of 1962. What it did was that it took away those rights that he had before the 1948, but which was reiterated in the 1948 Act. And it said, when Jamaica, on the day that Jamaica becomes independent, if you're in the UK as a British citizen, fine. But if their independence makes you Jamaican, then your nationality becomes Jamaican.
Mm-hmm.
And if your father or his father, meaning your grandfather, were Jamaicans, then you cease to be British, you become Jamaican. How many people know this?
Wow. Yes.
So let me go on. Let me give you some more. People were unaware of that. The guy called Mr. Windrush, which is Sam King.
Yes.
If you go to the National Archives, there's the registration. So you had to register to become a British citizen. After 1962, if you're Jamaican, he's registered. The guy called Martin Ford, who did the Ford report for the Labour Party and what else, there's a document of his father registering. In fact, you have to advertise. So it says, let's say his father was called John Ford. Do you know do you know what reason that the Home Office minister should not give a citizenship to Mr. John Ford for registration?
Wow.
So you see, the people that were caught were not aware that they had to register. You are not illegal, so you could live in Britain. You are not illegal, but you are not British if you are not registered. Mm-hmm. And I remember not even the 71 Act, but 1981 Act. I think there was a window where people were offering, because I think there was a payment and people were offering to pay for people to go and register. But a lot of people felt comfortable that, well, I've always been British. I've been here since 1952 or however long. So anyway, I think I've expanded on the relevance and not so relevance of the British Nationality Act.
And thank you, because you most certainly have. But let's take on, and if we spend maybe another 5 minutes, then I want to go into your other courses. But let's take it further and bring us to today. So there are thousands, many thousands of people from the Caribbean and West Africa, who've yet to claim their citizenship. Because we're clear, you and I will know that a former prime minister made it clear that, or made a public apology for what happened. Okay, and in recognition that if you had been in this country prior to 72, you had an absolute right to be here. But if you were a child, but I also understand, even if you arrived a little, maybe a decade or two afterwards, you still had a right to be here. And most certainly, if you were a child of those who arrived in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, that you absolutely had a right to claim your British citizenship. But the real challenge that many people have is the documentation, being able to prove when they arrived. And then secondly, some may have a record and they were concerned that would create a problem. And then thirdly, which is really important for us, I suppose, that the other group of people are those who simply don't trust the British institution, and most certainly do not trust the Home Office, particularly more recent leaders, which has included the former Prime Minister as well, because they say one thing but do something quite different when you make yourself known. And it is this myth that we need to debunk. And why you're here is to provide some confidence to those who are currently not presented themselves, so they can reclaim their citizenship, give them confidence that the process the process is clear, and they are not going to be victimized. And it's that reassurance we need to provide, my esteemed elder.
Right. Thank you very much. First, for again, another disclaimer. My interest in Windrush came about because of the misinformation I was coming across. Very, very prevalent, very, very deep-seated. So what I did was to really, really drill down the history a bit before and up to the 50s. And quite frankly, I don't even want to touch on the mid-50s because the lay of the land changes. So I'm looking at before 48 and up to 1950 or 51. So my focus has not been on our contemporary times in terms of the Windrush compensation stuff. I can speak to it to some extent, but I'm being guarded because that is not my expertise. First of all, yes, I mean, if you were legally settled in the UK before the end of 72, so that means before 73. And sadly, a lot of people say 1971, but including the government's websites also say that it should say before 73, because that's when the act kicked in, the Immigration Act of 71.
Yes.
So for those listening, if you're here to 31st December 72, you're okay. Yeah. Okay. And then for this, in terms of the Windrush compensation, they extended that, I do believe, to 1988 or 85, around 88, into the 80s. So if you're legally supposed to be here,
correct,
and you came before, I think, 85 or 88, I suspect it's 1988,
88.
you're okay. Now, in terms of the confidence, I can understand why people are a bit jittery, because the people administrating the stuff is the Home Office. So, and it's the Home Office that is deporting people.
Yes.
So people would naturally feel jittery about giving or exposing myself of not having papers. But I'm glad you've raised this. It can be dealt with. It's not an insurmountable, what should I say, situation. First of all, do not expose yourself to Home Office directly. There are a lot of Windrush legal advocacy groups. One of the earliest was started at the BCA, the Black Cultural Class, but there's quite a lot of them. I've got to give a shout out to Preston descendants, Windrush descendants, and stuff like that. So go to, and I'll suggest an African-led Jackie McKenzie and stuff like that, the lawyer, they all involved in so many of these things. Go to an African-led Windrush advocacy group.
Mm-hmm.
They've had experience, they've got the case study, they understand the loopholes. I've also got to give a name check to Garrick and Roland or Ronald. I've forgotten their Windrush group, but they're doing a lot of stuff. Oh, you have to check it because they do regular Zoom meetings on Sundays. So for people in the situation we're talking about, they have to jump on their Zoom meeting and to find out whatever information they need. So in a nutshell, go to an African-led Windrush advocacy or advice group.
Thank you. What I will do, whilst the show progresses, is just get the contact details for the Preston Windrush, who I've had on this show previously. I know that Jackie McKenzie is now working for an excellent law firm who brought her in to specialise in Windrush cases, and I'll get those details out as well before the end of the show. And lastly, I'm aware that, of course, there are a number of other groups, such as the Global African Congress UK, who are also supporting the Windrush campaigns, and I believe are supporting regular monthly presentations in Parliament. Again, details.
Yes, and that is done by the group I'm talking about. Their name escapes me, but it's run by Garrick and Roland.
Correct.
And they approached me, and I like their approach.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people think Windrush is just about people from the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, from the get-go, I said the Windrush scandal is a misnomer because it locates the scandal and the Windrush situation with Caribbean people. But no, it impacted on everyone from the Caribbean. So in fact, I describe it as a Commonwealth and Windrush scandal. So this group, and I'm sorry, Garrick and Ronald, your organization's name escapes me. They approached me and said, look, we need to reach out to people from Africa, particularly West Africa. So we're looking at Nigeria and Ghana. There are people sitting in Ghana that know that the scheme is for them. And if you don't have the information and you go to the High Commission, they'll just bamboozle you because they're not interested in you coming. Mm-hmm. So they'll bamboozle you. So you need to link up with these organizations. But again, I want to repeat this. The perception is that it's a Caribbean problem. Mm-hmm. So a lot of continental Africans are not engaging with the situation. But no, it is a British Commonwealth situation. So whether you're from the Indian subcontinent or anywhere in Africa, if you're an ex-colony, mm-hmm. You can get involved in the compensation scheme or to get your rights to return and all that kind of stuff.
And lastly, on this particular subject, then we'll move on to your wider series of courses, which are so fantastic, I have to say. But let's conclude on this one. What would you say to those who are currently stateless? Okay, who if they're in a position that they need to move from one job to another, they can't because you would need to prove your current status. What would you say to such people?
Wow, it is difficult. That's why I'll go to the experts who probably come across that situation. Mm-hmm. So my advice is that please go to African-led Windrush advocacy and advice groups, mm-hmm. because they've got a history to tell you exactly. This is a legal thing. So I don't think someone like me should say any more than to go to the experts in the area.
Very good. Thank you. And let's hope listening to the esteemed elder Kwaku making such a statement will move those who I'm aware, both in my own constituency here in Southwark, across South London, where I'm based, and across other parts of London, which I'm familiar with. I know hundreds of people who are in that position who do not trust the Home Office. Okay,
can I just say, please finish, because I just want to add to what you're saying. Isn't it a tragedy that we're looking at 5 years on or so, 2018?
Yes.
And there are people still not in a position to sort out their position because they're scared of the system. So that means they're not hearing what we're saying, that the organizations that can support them, you don't have to be underground. There are organizations that can support you. And indeed, it will be good. I can't go on the internet right now, so it'll be good. The Motivator, if you can go on and share the details in today's program, because there are some good organizations. And I just wish someone on the chat or who's listening can remind me of the Windrush project I'm talking about, because they do monthly things on this, or every 2 weeks or monthly on Sundays, and I know, and they go to the House of Commons as well because they are campaigning.
Okay, I will get the information. Don't you worry. I will get the information. Thank you. So, what I will now want to do now is move on to you and the enormous number of courses. You haven't slowed down since I last met you.
The Motivator. I told you I was going to disrupt your thing, and I am. Although I did put a disclaimer in terms of how much I could talk about Windrush, I think it's only fair if your program's on Windrush that we talk a bit more about as much as I can divulge without feeling that you need to go and buy my book or whatever I'm doing. So I'm going to ask you both 2 questions. Oh, no. I'm going to set something. I want you to respond. Then I will respond in the context of the Windrush narrative. So, Sister Abena and the Motivator, I'm giving you 10 seconds to tell me one thing that you think you know about Windrush. And it's not, don't, in terms of Windrush history, don't kill yourself whether you think it's right or wrong, because if it's wrong, I will respond. But obviously, what you're going to say is what is out there in the general received wisdom that is out there in public domain. So maybe I should start with the motivator. Can you just tell me one thing you think you know about the Windrush history? Just one aspect, and then Sister Abena will do the same, and then we'll respond to it. So that might help us sort of say a bit more about the Windrush history.
I think, first of all, before I would have put a disclaimer in, I don't actually accept that I'm part of the so-called Windrush generation. Windrush was simply a German vessel that was used for troops that was then converted for passengers, as you well know. Right? So I don't ascribe to it, just for the record, okay? So that's my first bit of tidbit for you. Then secondly, of course, believe it or not, the majority of people from the Caribbean arrived there by plane. My parents arrived there by plane. So another reason why I do not ascribe to the description. There you are.
No. You said very valid things. And can I just tell you, by the way, Professor Gus John has got a book coming out, Why the Windrush Should Not Be Salvaged. And he does salvage the whole Windrush thing. And he obviously is not into the Windrush generation thing. And fine enough, I know someone who is very much linked to the Windrush thing, but privately says he's not a Windrush person.
Oh.
So what you say is valid, but still, I want you to give me one bit of Windrush history, and then obviously link to the shape, and then we'll find out whether that is right or wrong. So because I thought since you built this particular program about disrupting the Windrush history, let's see what is out there in the general public, and it could be right, and if it's wrong, then I'll respond to it. And Sister Abena, after the motivator, you come up with your one gem on Windrush history. We'll see whether it's right or wrong. So back to you.
Sorry. I'm very conscious that it arrived at Southampton. It stopped at Southampton, London, or Tilbury, and I believe it went on up to Hull. Is what I understand as part of the history.
Okay, good. So let me respond to it very quickly, and then Sister Abner will get to us in. It's very interesting because we have to really be clear about a journey. A journey starts and ends. So when we're talking about a journey, are we talking about a journey going out or the journey coming back? But this is a rhetorical question. An old article on The Guardian, the great thing about The Guardian is that when they make corrections, they tell that they've made a correction to an article. One of the early articles on Windrush said it arrived at Southampton. So obviously they learned better and made an amendment. But let me tell you the connection to Southampton. It did not arrive at Southampton. The Empire Windrush left Tilbury, went to Southampton, where it picked up its passengers to the Caribbean. Dumped them. Oh no, I shouldn't use dump them. It's very disrespectful. And then they disembarked in Trinidad, Jamaica. They went to Mexico, where they picked people. Nobody. And then they went to Cuba. Nobody got on or off because they had a problem, I think, with the engine, that type of thing. And then it went to Bermuda, where people got off and people got on. Then it came to Tilbury. So that's how, from Bermuda to Tilbury, and that's the end of the Empire Windrush story in terms of this narrative. So Southampton fits in the sense that people embarked on the Empire Windrush from Southampton to go to the Caribbean.
Thank you. Oh, that's interesting. So, there you are. Again, the theme of the show is very clear, of course. It is, of course, to correct the narrative that's spoken. Perfect.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Sister Abena, what is your...
Oh my God, history is not my strongest suit in subject.
No, but that's the whole point. It's not about history. It's about what people have heard. And with all due respect, Windrush has become so pervasive that even people not interested in African history would have heard of Windrush. So just tell me, and then again I'll respond. Oh, that's right, or that's wrong. We are learning.
Basically, what I know is from what we do in Black History Month in the schools that I work in is when they talk about how Caribbeans came to the country between 1948 to 1971 from the Commonwealth Caribbean countries, and they came here to work because the British immigration law had changed. So that's why the whole Windrush system came about, from what I know.
Right, but I have debunked that in my earlier thing. So I want you to bring up some. I want you to just say the Windrush. This is this. So no, I'm going to push you a bit. So come up with maybe a statement that you've heard about the Windrush.
It was to help with the workforce, the UK workforce. So to bring nurses, doctors.
Okay. Thank you. It's those type of things that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
A lot of the very entrenched Windrush narrative is about they came. So right now, focus on the ship as opposed to the other ships that came. They came because they were invited to come and help the manpower shortage in Britain.
Correct.
No such thing happened. They were not invited. And if you look at the contemporary, by contemporary, I mean of that time, the 1948 and so forth, not a man, and most people who were given a voice were men, said, I came to help the mother country, or the mother country helped me, so here I am. It's a rewriting of history. So Abena, especially since you do things in schools, there's people that have been writing this that I know, I emailed them and said, just give me one evidence of the British government. Don't give me 1950s, because that's why I focus mid 1950s, because the story changes from the 1950s. So there's this conflation of the post mid 1950s onto 1948. So Abena, now when you go into schools, you tell them that the people on the Windrush and the early ships that came after were not invited to come and help the shortfall. Yes, there was a manpower shortfall, but the British government did not advertise in the Caribbean for people to come and work in the UK because they needed manpower, whether nurses or whatever. There's one exception, and that, you see, when people say that, they don't tell the backstory. About 33 to 36 B. How many Caribbean colonies start with B? Because it's not Bahamas, it's not Bermuda. Barbados.
Barbuda.
Yeah. About 33 to 36 Barbadian women were invited to come and work, not as nurses, because people want, when they talk about the NHS story, they want to say, oh yeah, from 1949, they were invited as nurses. No, they came as domestics. It's very, very clear. It's very, very clear. And in fact, there's a bit in the files, in the National Archives, where when they advertised, they talked about auxiliaries, and the colonial office was very annoyed about that, because they did not come. Because auxiliaries is something else compared to domestics, but they came as domestics. But the point is that the British government did not invite them. Their government asked for that, and as much as they needed women, both nurses and domestics, they only did one-off recruitment scheme, and less than about 36 people. Sometimes you see 33, sometimes you see 36. But we're talking about 3,000 out of thousands that were needed. So that's the only, what should I say, thing that happened before the mid-50s in terms of invitations. So anyway, I think I saw, you see, by you saying things, it helps me to sort of expand a bit on the Windrush story. So I hope to some extent.
I was going to say, it's good to know that, but schools are very restrictive about what you teach. So for me personally, it's better that I teach my son, my nephews, my nieces, because schools will only allow you to teach a certain kind of, to meet the curriculum. So they teach Black history for a week, but in very small parts, and then they have a presentation, and then that's Black History Month done. in schools. That's how they do it. It's like the wider communities of Brixton and Peckham that kind of elaborate the whole process of Black History Month. So that's when our children get to know more about it. In schools, it is very restrictive because they have to follow a curriculum. They have to do this unless do. You know, unless they do like one of the year 3 classes for a whole term, they do like a subject about Benin or Ghana, and that's when kids really get to know about, or they have an international evening. Other than that, it will never be beyond what the real truth is. So it would always be written by somebody who's watered down the situation.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I really take on board what you're saying, but whether it's a day or a month, the focus for me is whether the information is right or wrong. So that's why I started disrupting British African series. And the first two are on Windrush, only because I know people go do Windrush events, or people are going to go to Windrush events, get new information about the Windrush. It's important to know whether they're right or wrong, because I won't say a lot, but some of that information that's well known are not based on historical facts. And please, I don't want to say that the schools or the system do it. As Africans, including as African teachers and African writers, and including academic writers as well. And I'll tell you, some who are professors have got some rubbish in that history book. Those history books. In terms, I'm rubbishing it because they're not historically correct. But who's Kwaku? Who's going to listen to Kwaku when Professor blah 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 says it's because he's written a book? My book hasn't come out. So we even our professors and academics, we have to be challenging them because they are not the total fountain of knowledge, particularly with British African history. I say British African history is a relatively new discipline. So it has not had as much rigor in terms of researching and bringing it out. What we do is repeat. And I can tell you some books, I know where it comes from because I know, this information that's repeated from this book or this thing. I know this person is the guy that said it. Once you've done as much as I have, sometimes you know where the sources come from. So they repeat each other and start regurgitating the same misinformation.
My esteemed elder, if I may ask you at this point, and I'm going to this last question. You see, within my lifetime, and my mother and father will of course tell you this, that in the Caribbean, there was a major drive by British companies in the late 50s and early 60s to recruit people from the Caribbean, particularly the large manufacturing firms, because there was a labour shortage. And of course, the National Health Service, the British Rail, of course, another big one that came to the Caribbean, and brought up large space in the local newspapers and space on radios, encouraging people from the Caribbean to come to Britain. And more importantly, and this will surprise some people, the health minister, British health minister, between 1960 and 63, that's a very important time. The British health minister was, in fact, the one and only Enoch Powell. So he went to the Caribbean, particularly Jamaica, to recruit nurses for the National Health Service. Now, that is historical recorded facts that large British firms, and British agencies such as the British Rail and, of course, National Health Service had a recruitment drive in the Caribbean to recruit people from the Caribbean to come to Britain to work on the railways and in hospitals and so on. That's simply a statement of fact. You're not.
So would you like me to respond to what you said?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm smiling because in my head I'm saying, this is what's the word? Not a rerun, a run for my disrupting British African histories.
Okay.
Because you said a lot of stuff, you said it with confidence, and I don't blame you because it's been repeated and over. So you're not a historian, you're not going to go to primary sources. You read the newspapers, you might read a book, and that's what you've got from it. So let me dissect everything you said.
My esteemed elder, just to be clear, this is the actual experience of my parents.
Okay.
My parents came over primarily, and it's astonishing, Enoch Powell, the then health minister, actually visited Jamaica in late 1960, and urged people from Jamaica in particular. This is why my mum came over to come to Britain to train as nurses. That actually happened, and that's part of our family history. Okay,
Right. So can I respond?
of course.
Uh, I'm not going to go in a linear fashion. I'm just going to respond to bits that come to mind.
Okay.
But I'll tell you one thing, that a technology that I've introduced is called present past projection.
Okay.
Present past projection. That's a terminology I've developed. What happens sometimes is that when we tell in history, we tell it from the lens of today. You said something, radio adverts. There were no radio adverts in those because they were colonists, BBC. There was no radio adverts. There was newspaper adverts, so you could not advertise on radio. But we are in 21st century where we know you can advertise on radio. So that's one thing. Secondly, I talked about humility earlier on. And I'm a person, I always go to people's defense because I'm happy to learn. I don't say I know a lot, but I don't know everything. So I'm happy and I go to other people's defense to learn. And when I'm wrong, I put my hands up. I've done a book, and I'll tell you why I do that. The first book I did, I talked about a subject, and at that time, there was only 2 references on the internet. Can you believe? Only 2 references. So I just gladly picked it up and put in the booklet. It got published, and later on, I found that if only I had gone to mine, because I was writing about local history, it's called Brand Black Music History. If only I'd gone to the archives and read the local newspapers, I'd have found that I was wrong. A date that was given, and it was reproduced from a book on reggae, was wrong. And there I was copying it. In fact, it was to do with, what's his name? Dennis Bovell. So then I filmed Dennis Bovell, and I gave him my book to read. And he also quotes that date, but the date is wrong. So it gets repeated. So where am I going with this? Okay, now, so in terms of humility, I would say that I do not believe that power went to the Caribbean.
Oh,
as a minister. But if I'm wrong, please, someone, I have asked people, show me the evidence.
okay.
I have scanned through the Gleaner, which is Jamaican newspaper, haven't said, yeah, and I haven't come across that. I went to his website and I asked them. I haven't had any evidence of, but it's repeated. Funny enough, that reminds me, the Statesman, I think, had an article, and Statesman is paywall, so you can't read everything. And I had free access, and I thought I'll check it out, but I'd forgotten the story. So I have to go on the Statesman and see what they said. But to my best knowledge, Enoch Powell did not go to the Caribbean. Now, what you're saying, that is why I say I'm focused on before 1948 to 1950. In fact, my book is called Disrupting British African Histories, Volume 1. That presupposes that there will be other volumes, but this, for the first one, is the 1948 Windrush narratives, 1948 to 1950. Because the story changes after the 50s, particularly the 1950s. So yes, you are right that the London Transport, to my knowledge, British Rail did invite people, but I don't think they went to directly recruit. London Transport certainly went to Barbados to recruit. And again, we have to be specific. They did not go all over the Caribbean. They did not go to Jamaica. They went to Barbados, a very specific thing. And if you're interested in the backstory, they went because they were invited by the Barbadian government. The Barbadian government also invited the British Association of Hotels and Restaurants to recruit people to work in the hospitality industry. So these came as a consequence of proactivism from the Caribbean. So it wasn't the British saying, oh, we're short of people, which they were. Let's go to the Caribbean. One colony particularly, because what they've got high density in terms of the population to their space. So they did encourage people to migrate. So that is a story. So yes, the national health would have encouraged people to come, but that was from the 50s. Apart from that one exception I gave you, 1949. And most of these things come around the mid 50s. A
Okay.
few around 1954, but most of them were, for example, the London Transport, that was 1955, 1956.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My esteemed elder, I think this is really healthy, and I should have anticipated that the word disruption means exactly that. That common knowledge that appears to be common may not.
Yes, yes.
I hear you. I hear you. We're going to do this again, okay? And I will be better prepared. Don't you worry. But I'm keen because the objective of the show has been achieved. That is that those who are affected by the so-called Windrush scandal must present themselves and must recognise their status. Okay, you've heard the esteemed elder speak on the subject. Okay, contact a Black or African-led organisation. And I failed to prepare sufficiently for this. Let me take responsibility. I should have had a list of organizations that I should put on the screen. I should read out. Unless you have a few handy there, my elder, that's fine. I'll prepare it for my next strong show. I'll do that, sir. But if I may, because our time is running short, what I want to do now, if I may, I want to give promotion to the various courses and events that you are currently advertising, which includes this one that you've just mentioned. And I'm going to put it on screen. I'm going to ask you to speak to it. I know that my co-presenter will have to leave shortly. She has worthy family priorities. Okay, I may want to say something to you right now, if you wish to.
Sister Abena,
Yes, brother.
go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm going to really check out, for me personally, I think I need to check out my sources because I'm trying to teach my son about Ghana, the transatlantic trade. So I'm going to definitely seek out the sources and find out so I can give him the right information.
Yeah.
And also, you know, when you were saying about legitimate organizations that will help people with immigration and stuff like that, for me as a family support worker, I've noticed when I've come across organizations that do try to help families, it doesn't always go the way it seems to go for some of my families, and it can put them under financial strain. So if you do have that information, I would be really susceptible to take it from you so I can pass it on to my families as well that are going through these kind of issues.
Absolutely. Particularly the one, obviously there are a lot of worthy ones. One is called Windrush Advice or whatever. So there are a lot of worthy ones, but I like the ones Garrick and Roland are running. So if I can go online, I will check that during the course of this program, because at least that should be one that information we can pass during the course of this program. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Can I just jump in quickly, especially
Yeah.
since you're in schools and obviously you've been proactive about your child's education. Let me just give you a little story, because one of the programs I'm doing is Disrupting British African History, Black History Month, UK, 1984 to 1988, right? How Black History Month came about. So the gem of it came about because there was a guy called Adai Sebo who worked at the GLC. And one day, a female staff came in and she was looking dejected. So he asked him, "Oh, why are you down and out?" And he said, "Yesterday, my son incidentally called Marcus, because he was named after Marcus Garvey." So this is mother trying to instill some African pride into the son. But Marcus nevertheless asked his mom, "Mommy, why can't I be white?" So you know the damage that has been done outside, whether in the schools or his peers. So everything white was great, everything African was bad. And that was the gem that Adai Sebo got to move what became Black History Month. And by the way, in case I don't get to talk about, Black History Month did not start in the GLC. It started in another organization, because GLC was closed down in 1986, as I'm sure Brother Martin would know. So now I'll move to language. You said the transatlantic slave trade. As Africans, we have to be proactive in owning our language. It's not a trade, it's trafficking.
Yes.
And it's not slave, it's enslaved.
Yes.
So you see, once you change the language, the perception of the discussion also changes.
Yeah.
So we talk about transatlantic trafficking and people being enslaved. Because you see, let me give you a quick example. When you use the word enslaved, that gives a vision of someone having enslaved that person, someone having put that person in that position. But when it says slave, there's the assumption that they were born slaves and that's they are stationed in the world. But when you say enslaved, that means someone had to be proactive in making that person enslaved or become a slave, if you want to use that word. So enslaved and trafficking, at least those are the two words you picked up from today, my sister.
Yeah. Thank you, Brother
You're more than welcome.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And that's why you're here, my Stina Elder. Thank you so much. Thank you. Correcting that narrative, taking control of the narrative is of principal concern. Okay, and if I may, I'm just conscious we've got relatively modest amount of time now, and I want to give light to your forthcoming courses. And if I may, I'm going to share this page, and we might then ask you just to talk to page on the Eventbrite, and you can please describe the courses and how it's possible for listeners to partake in your courses. They might bring up the screen now. Let's hope it works without any problem. There we go. Right, there we go. There you are. Now, can you see that all right? Yep. Okay, can you see it all right?
Yeah, I can see. I mean, I've got a sense of it that I can see.
Right.
I'm not sure what the first. I do something. Okay, so first of all, like you, Brother Martin, we are bombarded by information coming from WhatsApp, coming from TikTok, and so forth. Sometimes I can look at them, sometimes I can't. So we created a strand called WhatsApp TikTok. So what I do is that I just curate a number of these videos that have come to us. Sometimes slightly in a random fashion, but trying to follow a theme. So I'm not quite sure what is the first one, but it will be on a theme.
I can read it to you right now.
Yeah.
It's the Edu-Social Political Learning Experience Conclude TikTok, it says here.
Right. Thank you. So what happened was that when we started, I didn't expect to go so long. So I just did one, and there was a big feedback too. So I did the second one, and then I said, okay, in terms of the general one, so this is a general runs about politics, education, blah, 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 blah. But I found out that to go forward, it would be useful to sort of have a theme. So this concludes in which I'll be using some random videos. But the important thing is that it's moderated. And when it's moderated, people can sort of see the links and more importantly, how we can move it forward in your life. So you've seen this video. What is it telling you? Is there something you can take to move forward with your life? But I also put a disclaimer that I cannot vouch for the veracity of these things. They've come, I don't edit them, I just show them. So it's for you to also go and do your due diligence to find out a bit more whether, let's say if it's a history video, whether the history is correct or not. So this one in particular will be what I call random, because it's a mixture of every video that I've seen.
All right. So thank you. So that particular course is on the 2nd of June, Friday, 2nd of June, from 6:30. Again, they can find you under your banner, which of course,
which is African History Plus. That's PLUS, African History Plus .eventbrite.com. AfricanHistoryPlus.eventbrite.com. So once you go there, you see all the programs. As Brother Martin is
the next one you've got here. The next one is on the 5th, Monday, the 5th of June.
Absolutely. That I know. I can speak to you immediately because it's saved in my brain. Because June 5th is the World Environmental Day.
Yes.
World Environmental Day. So we are going to be... Well, I've created some videos that speak to the environment. And I've got particular interest in Ghana. And I think Jamaica, because in Ghana, I'm part of an organization called Eco-Conscious Citizens. And one of the things that they're fighting against is for one of the forest reserves to be taken out of the table in terms of mining bauxite. And I know that the people in the cockpit country in Jamaica are also fighting this thing about mining in their area that destroys the ecosystem. So yes, June 5th, we'll be looking at the environment. So that I remember.
Perfect. On Wednesday the 7th, the reggae stakeholder meeting.
Right. So since 2022, I've been doing marking International Reggae Day. I have to say it straight away. It's not my initiative. International Reggae Day was founded by a sister called Andrea in Jamaica. It's been going for about 27 or so years. And I did the first one on 20, 2017 at Westminster University. And the vibe was so good that I decided to carry on. So I didn't want to do it just for London. So I became the UK coordinator. So although I do London-based stuff, we are very much interested in people doing it outside London. So the stakeholders meeting is to tell people the potential of doing an international reggae day in, let's say, Leeds, in terms of Bristol or whatever. And the good thing is that unlike previous years where you had to pay a license fee to do an RRD, International Reggae Day, RRD badge event, now you can just have do the license, but you do not have to pay. So that is it. So we're telling people an update to what we are going to do, which is July 1st. International Reggae Day is always July 1st. Our main one will be at Goldsmiths University of London in South London.
Brilliant. Thank you. On Friday, the 16th of June, you say here another Lambeth Windrush history.
Okay, right. So people have got great ideas, or there's a lot in the public domain about Lambeth, or particularly Brixton and the Windrush story. The idea that a lot of them went to the Clapham South Deep Shelter, which, by the way, as far as I know, is not in Lambeth, but it's actually in the neighboring borough, which is Wandsworth. But some of the stories that I'm going to tell on the day after the passengers arrived on Empire Windrush are little known stories to do with Lambeth and outside Lambeth. So that is one of the physical events that I am doing at Lambeth Town Hall.
Brilliant. Thank you. And on Monday, the 19th of June, this specific stream that I picked up on, Disrupting British African History Sessions. One fact-checking Windrush narrative. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so in fact, 1 and 2. So the first one's in June 19th. And I do believe the second one is July 10th. They both on Windrush. Because I'm saying that if you want to fact check your knowledge before you do your Windrush event, you got the opportunity. But more importantly, afterwards, I'm expecting people who would have heard things and they want to find, is this correct? Or they want some more information, they can come on the second one and get some more information. Indeed, there's a third one in October. October being African History Month. I don't do Black History Month. I do African History Month. Again, if you wanted to do, because the Windrush season should not just be for June 22 or around June. It should be much longer. So some people are doing to the end of the year. Some people are doing up to January, or in fact after in 2024. So in October 2023, you can also come and get some more or deep dive into the Windrush narrative. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And on June 21st, 80 years of British Black music, 1953 to 2023.
Yeah, thank you very much. And sorry for interrupting you. There is an initiative called Make Music Day. And Make Music Day is always June 21st. I think for the last 4 or so years, I've been supporting it by doing a program. So in fact, the first one I did, I think I did about 11 hours. It was crazy, but I was excited to do it. It was COVID, so it must have been 2020. Yeah, but this one, I think, starts about 1 o'clock and ends 8, or 2 o'clock and ends 8. And I'm covering, several decades of from, I think, the 1940s to present time. So the music will reflect the different decades.
Very good. Thank you. Brilliant. And I have participated in some of those earlier sessions, and absolutely perfect. The next one I've got here, the 28th of June, Talking Copyright 2023. Now, that's an interesting one, but I believe that this is where we've lost so much of our asset. But anyway, describe this particular procession.
Right. So I describe myself as an independent history researcher and a historical musicologist. So I write history about music. But the other thing that I am is that I'm a music industry consultant or tutor. So I've taught on music industry courses from grassroots level, including programs that we've done, some accredited, some unaccredited, right up to postgraduate level. So I mean, I have taught in universities in terms of music. So it's not black music; it's about the music industry. Because music, I think we've got that linked. A lot of people are very creative, but you have to understand it says music biz or music industry, and the fundamental machine that drives the industry is the concept of copyright. Because without copyright, what stops me just nicking your song and using it? So copyright allows us to protect and also monetize our creative endeavors. So talking copyright is a session me and Enrico, who's a lecturer, a lecturer at City University. So I think that we're doing this on. Are we doing this physical? No, I think we're doing this online. Or it could be physical. No, actually, sorry, it's physical. We've been doing it online so long that I've forgotten that this year it's going to be physical. So it will be at City University, and we'll just talk about issues to do with copyright. And I have to say that Enrico is Italian, but he's a reggae buff.
Right.
So it's always bringing perspectives of how reggae intersects with copyright. So you're welcome to join.
Thank you so much. And I note with interest that the whole of June, I've got June 30th, International Reggae Day, Saturday, 1st of July, International Reggae Day, Monday, the 10th of July. Of course, this is the second part 2 of the Disrupting British African History, and then the 29th of July, Music Industry Knowledge. Tell us about that one, Boosting Masterclass. Tell us about that one.
Oh, yes. I've been doing that for a long time. As I said, I mean, I do have degrees. I do have degrees, and one of the degrees being a music business, is a music industry, MA. I've got a LLM, that's entertainment law. So I do understand the industry, both the legal aspects and the practice. And it occurred to me that a lot of the information that I used to teach in higher education can be distilled to community level situations. So it could be an afternoon, it could be a day, it could be a couple of weeks, and the essence will still be there. So I've done programs that have a day or a number of days, and particularly when we have funding, and then we've got accredited courses that take a bit of time because people will go learn and also write essays so that they can be marked. And I don't give our certificates out willy-nilly. And that has been a shock to people, my brother, because people that know me personally think because they know me, they should be passed. And that didn't work for me because people put in, if you deserve it, you get passed. And if you don't, I'm sorry. That's it. Anyway, I'm sort of debating. So in terms of this event, I distill the essence of the music industry. So it's about copyright, it's about income streams. That's another thing. What are the income streams? What are the rights? What can I do? Yes. What are some of the, what should I say, skills or jobs that I can do in the industry? Because the industry is not just about the singers or the producers or the record labels. What's the music publisher? What do they do, for example? So all that information is on that. By the way, most of the events are paid, are free, I'm sorry, but this particular course is a paid for. And I think there's an early bird. So if you're interested, go investigate on African, what's my website? I've forgotten it. Oh, my, it's gone out of my head.
It will come back.
African History Plus. African History Plus, eventbrite.com.
My female, we've got maybe 3 minutes or so. I think guys, 2 at the same, or 3 at the same time. I see in the 14th of August, you've got this, forgive me. Forgive me. On the, I've lost where I've got to read now. I've lost my eyes have moved. There we go. Got it. I note here on the 17th of August, you've got the Marcus Garvey annual Pan-Africanism presentation, and secondly, on the 31st of August, the African History Reflection Day. And the last one I quickly want to focus on for the last 2 minutes is, of course, the Coleridge. There we are, remembering Samuel Coleridge Taylor on the 21st of September. You've got 2 minutes. Let's give us some.
Yeah, I'll do it very quickly. Marcus Garvey was born on 17th August. So we've been marking his day. And I tell you why, because there's a bust of Marcus Garvey in the Wilson Library. And then when it was rebuilt, they put it in cold storage. And we campaigned. We got something called the Marcus Garvey Bust Collective. and made sure that not only did it come to the library, it became as a permanent exhibit. Because you doing politics, lobbying, we had to lobby the borough and the library to make sure it's a permanent exhibit. So for people to remember that it is in the archives, I do this annual thing. It's been physical, but because of COVID, it's been online, and we may do a physical version, but it's online. Now, secondly, the UNIA in 2014, it marked the 100th anniversary of the founding of the UNIA, Universal Negro Improvement Association. Let's not forget the other part, ACL, African Communities League.
Yes.
So marking it again, we move forward the idea that we should have something called African History Reflection Day.
Mm-hmm.
So that day, because Marcus Garvey, if you look at the declaration of the UNI, it says that 31st August should be a holiday. But I'm defining holiday much broadly. If you take time out of your usual stuff, that's a holiday. So take time out for your usual stuff to focus on African history. You'd have marked African History Reflection Day. So,
my esteemed elder, I'm really sorry, we're almost out of time.
That's fine.
On the 21st of September, Samuel Coleridge
Taylor was one of the greatest composers of African heritage. His father came from Sierra Leone, and we're marking his day because last year it just passed me by. This year he would have been 111. I think he was born not in Croydon, by the way. He was born on Thurballs Road in Holborn, and we're marking his anniversary. So it's all on the website, AfricanHistoryPlus.eventbrite.com. My brother, the motivator, thank you very much for giving this platform.
It is excellent, excellent presentation. We need to do it again sooner, I suspect. You have such knowledge. We need your knowledge. I say to people here, listen to the esteemed elder Kwaku. His words are final. Thank you very much, my elder. Thank you. And long will you continue your good works.
Oh, same to you as well. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, audience. We're almost out of time. I want to thank you all for your listening ear. Please share the link of this show with your friends and your families. Whole purpose of these shows to empower, to inform, to raise confidence. So you're certain that the Motivator Show, this is where we translate our words into action, where success is ours for the taking. Until the next strong, I'm the Motivator. Stay strong, please. Stay strong.